Before beginning the talk, my namaskarams to all the devotees who have assembled here. Especially to Sulojanamma and Sharadaka. They are all as Kanagamma used to say, Kotta Adimai. They belong to Bhagavan. And we all belong to Bhagavan. The entire life they have spent first problem was what should be the caption. Ramana is not a person, Ramana is an experience. So we gave the caption as Ramananubhava. Experience of Ramana, Ramana experience, or experiencing Ramana. Ramana is the name which we gave to that truth which manifested in the world. As the epitome of spiritual experience. Bhagavan had no name. He was beyond all names. And Bhagavan was in Skandashrama. Many who are not acquainted with Bhagavan's life, if they go to Tiruvannamalai, above the hill is the Skandashram, where Bhagavan stayed for many years. When he was staying there, somebody who had heard about Bhagavan, Ramana Maharshi, he came to Skandashramam. At that time Bhagavan was there. Preparing some fuel for cooking, that dried cow dung cakes. Varattin solluvume Tamil. This person came, he wanted to see Ramana Maharshi. He thought that Bhagavan will be sitting, might have thought perhaps that Bhagavan will be sitting as like a Matadipati, like a pontiff, would be there, available. Then he could not find anybody else there. Bhagavan with a single kaupinam, that too was not an identification mark. Because many in Tiruvannamalai, even now you can see, living only in kaupinam and with small lion clothes they will be living, sadhus. So when he saw Bhagavan doing that work, he didn't recognize. He went to him and asked, where is Ramana Maharshi? Bhagavan said, you might be somewhere, you'll be coming. At that time, one of the devotees, Perumal Swamiya irundar kuda. Perumal Swami or some other devotee who was coming after taking his bath with all vibhuti bhasma. And this devotee thought him as Ramana Maharshi and did a prostration to him. And he was taken aback. He said, why are you prostrating to me? He said, I came to see Maharshi. He said, Maharshi is there. Then he went and looked at Bhagavan and did pranams, and then he said, Bhagavan, why did you deliberately mislead him by directing him to somebody else? Bhagavan said, he asked about Maharshi. To me, everybody is Maharshi. And if you say Ramana Maharshi, that name is written everywhere in this ashram, and even the vessels, there it is written as Ramana. So I can even direct him to some vessel. So many people call me by many names. How do I know that he wanted to see me? He had never that localized feeling of I. He was that universal self. We can talk about Vedanta, but to live it, to have no identification with our personality, to efface our personality, to lose this localized I, this Ekadeshiya Satta, it's not so easy, especially when you become well known, when you are worshipped by many, it is next to impossible. I will narrate one more incident. First biography of Bhagavan in Malayalam, somebody wrote, factually it was fully of errors. Not only errors but blunders. He had written, Ramana Maharshi was a grihastha, he was married, and he had 4 children, and one day suddenly he felt Arunachala is calling. He disappeared from his place and appeared in Arunachala, and all those details he wrote. And the interesting thing is that he took the proof to Bhagavan to get it corrected. Bhagavan took that, and the only mistake he could find in that biography is that instead of putting grihastha, the tha, instead of putting grihastha, it was written only grihastha. That mridu akshara. So he did that proof correction and gave it back to him and said, go and publish it. He took it back and he was about to get it published. But the printer had some more doubts and he brought it back to Kunjaswami, who was a Malayali, who was a great devotee of Bhagavan. And he gave it to Kunjaswami, and Kunjaswami looked at it. He got the shock of his life. All blunders were written there. He took it to Bhagavan and said, Bhagavan, poi poya edirkale Bhagavan. He said, Bhagavan, everything is falsehood. All non-factual, all errors have creeped in. It's all false. Then Bhagavan looked at him and said, Idu matranna poyyo, meedi ellam meyyo. Do you think only this is false? Everything else is true? அவனுக்கு என்ன தெரிஞ்சிருக்கோ அது அவன் எழுதியிருக்கான். உனக்கு என்ன தெரியுமோ அதை நீ எழுத. What he has known, that he has written. What you know, you also write. That means Bhagavan had no identification with that individual, that personal self, which we call as Bhagavan. But for us, that is the only entry door. Only through that form, only through that name, we see that infinite which manifested as Ramana Maharshi. So when we first enter into this subject, Ramana experience, we should be aware about this fact that Ramana experience is the experience of infinite, which has no name or known form, which is beyond all description, and which will give us the ultimate fulfillment. Now, I have selected two topics. The first one for today, I have taken these two topics from Bhagavan Sulladinarpada. The first one is the first verse. What Bhagavan has dealt in the first verse is Ulladu, truth, Satyam. And the second one is the reverse of it, or the other side of it is death, Mrityu. Unmai, Maranam, Mrityu. Ulladu, Maranam. So first, today, our topic is Ulladu. In very compact language, Bhagavan has condensed so much into that verse. He is using 14 times that word Ulla, 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 Ulla. I was born and brought up in Kerala, so I am not much at home with Tamil. But still, I used to frighten many Tamil scholars with this verse. Because with Tamil scholarship you cannot bring out the meaning. Because there is no extra Tamil word in it, only one word is there. Ulladala, Ulla Unar, Ullado, Ulla Porul, Ullalara, Ullate, Ulladal, Ullamenum, Ulla Porul, Ullalevan, Ullate, Ullapadi, Ullade, Ullal, Unarvai, Ulle, Ulla, 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 14 times Bhagavan has used. The entire teaching of Bhagavan has come out in that one verse. Ulle. Ulhar. In Tamil there is a usage for meditation. Regarding self-inquiry, that is the most appropriate word, that is Ulhal. In Pravachanam, it is used Oyade Ulhuvar Ullolirum Ullanai. Ulhal. Ulhal you cannot translate in English. It means, simply you can say inner ring. Inner ring. Inward flow. So truth, that is the most beautiful name for God. The greatest devotional work, Srimad Bhagavatam, starts by worshipping truth, Satyam Param Dhimahi. It ends with the same type usage of Satyam Param Dhimahi. So it starts with Satyam Param Dhimahi, ends as Satyam Param Dhimahi. The entire search of a seeker is to find truth, Satyam. But in Bhagavan's life, there was no such search. Truth itself sought him, found him and swallowed him. Spiritual life, when we start, we start it like any other seeking, any other process in the world. That is, I have a goal, I have to work for it, toil day and night, and achieve it. This is the process which we use in world for achieving anything, for attaining anything. We have a goal, we want to achieve it. We ask for the path and we are given some way, and through that path we move. We do practice, we practice, and we think by time we will achieve it, we will attain it. We are going to achieve it. This is the process or method we have used for achieving anything and everything in life. Not only in this life, for many, many lives we have done that. So that habit is ingrained in us. The same habit we bring to spiritual life also. And we want to achieve some goal, some realization, some enlightenment. And we keep it before us as a goal and we ask how to achieve it. Then somebody gives you some path, some sadhana, some method. With that, you always toil. Practice, practice, practice. And you think, today I am ignorant, and by practicing it, I am going to achieve something. This kind of sadhana we will do, and those who are really intense, real seekers means they are not seeking truth to glorify themselves. They know that there is sorrow in the world, misery in the world, there is death, there is disease. And whatever I am going to achieve, I am going to lose. So, a person who is really intelligently dispassionate, and he is not satisfied with anything in the world, and he comes to know that there is a goal, which Buddha calls as Varta. He says Varta. In Bhagavatam also that same word is used, Varta. Varta means at some point of life, at some time, this greatest sacred message falls into your ear that you can get released. You can be free. And that message generates a kind of dreaming power in the soul, that jiva starts dreaming about that freedom. That message is the greatest moment in life. Upanishad says, Shravanayapi bahuvaryo na labhyaha Shrinvanto vibhavo yamna vidyuhu. Many, they are not even fortunate to listen to it. But at some point of life, you listen that there is freedom or there is something which is divine, and that entices, that attracts you, and you seek it, or some force from within forces you to seek it. And there we start our sadhana to achieve that goal. We want to achieve it, we don't want anything else. Usually the sadhaka does sadhana, and the greatest achievement or the greatest breakthrough in the life of a sadhaka is the point where he recognizes his inability to go beyond. Whatever the sadhana may be, any kind of yoga, meditation, japa, at a certain stage, he recognizes his powerlessness. That is a very important point. You cannot recognize that in the beginning. Only after much striving, putting maximum effort. It is not the intellect which is understanding that powerlessness, it is not the mind, but the ego itself recognizes its powerlessness and gets ready to sink in the source or to surrender to a higher presence. That is the point where self-effort meets the river of self-effort meets the ocean of grace. Where self-effort comes in contact with a higher force, the redeeming force, which we call as Kripa. In Shaiva Siddhanta, they call it as Kripa Sakshatkara. It is something more than Atma Sakshatkara, they say. Kripa Sakshatkara. Recognizing a power which is not the mind, which is not the brain, which is not something material. The power which is incorruptible, the power which is not made of any force in the world. It is not a Jada Shakti. In Lalita Sahasranama, it is there. Jada Shakti Jadatmika Chit Shakti Chetana Rupa. The same force, Bhagavan says, when somebody asked what is mind and what is self, Bhagavan said, self-extroverted is mind, and mind introverted is self. The same force, when it becomes extroverted, it is mind. When it goes back to the source, when it turns towards the source, it ceases to be the mind. It is not made of that stuff with which mind is made of. It is something much deeper, something much more deeper, which is made of stuff which we call as love or divine love, and it pulls you with him. This is something which is inexplicable unless we see its operation in the life of saints and sages. In Bhagavan's own life you can see, in Tamil there is a usage, Taduthu Aal Kollal. It's not that you are doing sadhana and achieving, you are simply a powerless dry leaf which takes you by storm, which is being taken by storm of grace. We just become a powerless dry leaf. It's the example which Sri Ramakrishna uses. You become a dry leaf and the storm of grace makes you move. In Bhagavan's own life, there was no seeking. In this life at least, there was no conscious search. There was no conscious sadhana. He was born in Madurai, in Tiruchuri, that is Avartanagara. In that Tiruchuri he was born, and there was no conscious manifestation of spirituality in him in his childhood days. But it was hidden. Later on, when we look back, we can see that there were many hidden, there were many things which were mysterious about Bhagavan. He used to sit stone-like. That fact is revealed by many of Bhagavan's close friends, boyhood friends. They used to say, Bhagavan used to sit like a stone even in those days when he was a young boy. And one of his friends, Narayana Swami Iyer, he used to ask, Venkataraman, why do you sit like this? Bhagavan used to say, look, It is so interesting just not to have any thoughts and sit like this, like a stone. He said, I can't sit even for few minutes. How do you sit? Bhagavan said, you just try, you sit with me. And this person, he sat, and he says, Bhagavan just touched his Bhrumadhya. He touched with his finger, and he had some experience like a trance. He became so quiet, absolutely quiet, and he sat with Bhagavan for more than an hour in silence. So Bhagavan was not conscious what was operating in him. And his sleep was something very mysterious. His relatives used to call him as Kumbhakarna, because he used to sleep like that, and his friends, if somebody gets across, if they had some quarrel with Venkataraman, they knew what to do. When he goes to sleep, they used to shake him up and to take him around the ground and even beat him. Whatever they do, he will not be aware. And put him back. Next day morning, he will not even be aware what has happened yesterday. They thought, we have never seen such a sleep in anybody. We have heard about it only in Ramayana. That kind of deep sleep used to manifest in him. And the sleep, that is the entry door to the higher plane. Even in Kumbhakarna, that was not an ordinary sleep. Because Kumbhakarna and Ravana were not ordinary human beings. In their last birth, they were Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. They were very powerful. And if you go beyond, they were direct devotees of Lord who were standing in Vaikuntha. From there they had to come back, and they were so powerful because they directly came from Vaikuntha. And the next birth, Kumbhakarna easily cleansed his impurities in last life, so he had to sleep only. Complete sleep. That was not an ordinary sleep. Anyway, Bhagavan's life, that sleep was very important. When Vivekananda goes to Ramakrishna, Ramakrishna asked him, how do you sleep? Narendra said, just like anybody else. As everybody goes to sleep, I also sleep. Then Ramakrishna said, no, I am not asking you about others, how others sleep. I want to know how you sleep. He said, whenever I go to sleep, I see a circle that is full of light, effulgence. I just merge it and I go to sleep, he said. That is why I asked you. This is not the way everybody goes to sleep. See, our natural experiences itself, they are divine. They are the entry door to that truth which is eternal. So sleep, Bhagavan starts his smallest book, the greatest book, Who Am I? By describing sleep. He says in talks with Ramana Maharshi, in more than 90 places, Bhagavan has spoken about deep sleep. So that deep sleep state, there is one dimension which is what we call as sleep, and there is another dimension which is not sleep. In everybody. That is one state where there is absolute fulfillment. In Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Yajnavalkya says it is the Hiranyanidhisthana. A place where gold, treasure is hidden, and people walk above it for thousands of years without knowing that there is gold. And a Kshetrajna comes. Kshetrajna means one who knows that Kshetra, and he says there is gold under your feet. He says, I have been walking on this ground for last 30 years. And my father was living here, my grandfather was living here, but we were not aware. He says, uncover, remove the earth, you will see the gold. Like that, aharahar gacchantyaha na vidanti. Aharahar gachanti, every day we go to sleep, and in that sleep state, we have to observe what it is. In that sleep state, we are not achieving anything. See, when we started our talk, we said we are going to achieve something spiritual, attain. But in deep sleep, we are not achieving anything, we are not attaining anything. And there is absolute fulfillment in that state. We are actually losing our body, we are actually losing our mind, our personal self. And when we wake up, the taste of sleep lingers and we want to go back to lose our ego. And when we wake up, we say, there was joy, there was sukham in it. I was not aware anything there, but there was sukham, there was happiness. Or there was contentment, fulfillment. But usually we don't wake up directly from the sleep, we come through the corridor of dream to waking state. We come through the filter of thoughts to the waking state, that is why we don't recognize anything, the value of that state. We lose touch with that state and we say, I just slept, that was only rest. And in that deep sleep state, there was no body, there was no mind, there was no intellect, there was no external achievement, and there was deep fulfillment. Why I say deep fulfillment? Whatever you may give a person in waking state, whatever may be waiting him, whatever pleasure may be waiting him in the waking state, when he wakes up from deep sleep, he wants to go back to that state, deep sleep. And he is not interested in the pleasure of the waking state. In the waking state, he is a person and the pleasure is there. He can enjoy the pleasure. Still, there is a genuine thirst to lose the personality and to merge in that source where you are not a person. There is no object there, no subject there, no world, no body, and still there was joy. When we grow up, we dream more than deep sleep. That's why if we talk about deep sleep, many will not recognize. But in childhood days, if we just recollect, we can say there was a depth in it. There was a depth in it. And the dreamless sleep, deep sleep, that was something very mysterious about Bhagavan. That was the first indication in Bhagavan's life. So when we come to spiritual life, we also should be very careful about sleep. We should not take it as simply as a physical, biological process. We are, every day when we go to sleep, we are going to embrace the Lord. Become one with Him. Esha Sarveshwara, Esha Sarvajnaha, Eshontaryamihi, Esha Yonihi Prabhavapyayohi Bhutanam, says Shruti. In that state is Ishvara. Prabhavapyayo, the source from where everything springs up and goes back. So, That was one thing which was mysterious about Venkataraman, the deep sleep state. But still, that was only unconscious processing. Now we come back to Bhagavan's story. In Bhagavan's life, that deep sleep was only an unconscious processing, and in us also something might be taking place there about which we are not conscious. When Bhagavan came to Madurai after his father's demise, Sundaramaya's demise, he came to Madurai, and there he was just like any ordinary boy. He was having his school life. In American missionary school he was studying, and in Madurai Meenakshi temple, if you go there, on the southern side of that temple you can see the house where Bhagavan stayed. And Bhagavan had the highest experience. If somebody goes there, you can visit that house, that Ramana Mandiram there. When he was there, he was studying in American missionary school. Bhagavan said, at that time I was not at all consciously seeking anything spiritual. I was not even aware about Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads or anything. Just the ordinary ritualistic Vedic religion was there for the namesake, that's all. His father was also not a Vaidika, he was a pleader, and he was no more, and his father's younger brother was there, and he used to go to Meenakshi temple not for worshipping mother, but just to play there. He used to go there and play with other children. So there was no seeking. And it was 1896, that is 1893, Swami Vivekananda became famous after his Chicago address in America, and the whole of South was just revolutionized. There was great commotion, especially in Madurai, in Ramanathapuram, in Rameshwaram, in Chennai. There was great commotion. Many meetings were taking place, and Vivekananda is going to land in Rameshwaram on September 1896. He was about to land, the same date when Bhagavan has to start. So, Swami Vivekananda's talks, they were distributed to students and to learned people free of cost. Many copies were distributed. And in Bhagavan's house also, that Chicago talks was given. Somebody gave the talks to perhaps Bhagavan's brother or father's, his paternal uncle. That was there. When somebody asked later on about that to Bhagavan, Vivekananda was so famous, and his talk you might have read at that time at least. Bhagavan said, yes, one book was there in my house, talks of Swami Vivekananda. I tried my level best to read it, but the thing that I could do is pronounce, instead of Vivekananda, I pronounced it as Vivekananda. I could not even pronounce it. He was not so in search of any book, he could not read. Something from within was protecting him, not to get corrupted by anything, not to enter through any other door, but to directly enter to spiritual life by that grace. So the first awakening in Bhagavan's life is that listening. I said about Varta, message, Sandesha, Jnana Sandesha. That Jnana Sandesha in Bhagavan's life, it didn't come as a talk. Usually we listen about self or God or something, but in Bhagavan's life, simply a name, Panchakshara, 5-lettered word. Somebody came to his house who was related to him. And this boy, Venkataraman, he went to him and asked, "Where are you coming from? Engendu varelu?" See, I am using this Bhagavan's life to demonstrate something. No? Every jiva, when it is ripe enough to blossom, that thirst, it will be like a fire burning inside it. It will have, as I said, Swapana Shakti. That Shraddha is the Swapana Shakti of the jiva, or that Swapana Shakti is Shraddha. Some kind of dream about liberation will be there inside that jiva, and that dream, when it is interpreted through some word outside, when it finds some symbol outside, that anchorage, it gets an anchorage there and comes out. I cannot express much more clearly than this. See, this Nama Diksha, what we call as Nama Diksha, somebody initiates us through some Nama, but actually how it happens, I will be carrying a Nama inside me, and the Guru has to pronounce the same Nama outside. Then only it will become a real Diksha. I will be having that hidden within me. And the same Nama comes out through the Guru. He just verbalizes what I am carrying within me in a vague form. So Bhagavan was carrying inside him, even unknown to him, even he was not aware of Arunachala, 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 Arunachala. Bhagavan has himself narrated his autobiography. In Arunachala Ashtakam, Bhagavan himself has written, Arivarum Giriyana Amartarumam Ma Atishayamitan Shayal Arivaritarkum Arivarum Shiruvayad Adumudal Arunachalam Miga Peridana Arivinilanka. Bhagavan says this hill, this Arunachala, which when we look, it is just a stone, a solid concrete, inanimate thing. It looks like that. But how it operates in the human soul, அது எப்படி நம்மளை தடுத்து ஆள் கொள்ளறதுங்கிறது நான் எப்படி எக்ஸ்பிரஸ் பண்றது தெரியலையே அப்படிங்கிறார் பகவான். How the hill, Arunachala, how it caught hold of me, how it encroached into my being and held me captive, imprisoned me in his own heart. I cannot express, he says, from my very childhood, from my very babyhood, or even from the womb of my mother, there was a hidden dream about Arunachala. I never thought that it is a place in this world. I thought that it was something very divine, not of this world, not made of any material thing. It's the deathless plane, it's the divine plane. And then suddenly one day somebody came to my house and he said, I am coming from Arunachala. I could not believe somebody can go to Arunachala and come back alive. I could not believe, he says, I could not believe. Adu Thiruvannamalaiana Uruvaral Arivurappetrum. He says he came and Bhagavan asked, Engendu varelu, where are you coming from? He said, Arunachala. No ease, was or anything. He said, simply Arunachala. He stood struck by that. Because this person has unconsciously become his guru. Become a channel to initiate him. Suddenly, he is verbalizing that nama which he was carrying inside him. And he says, Arunachala. Bhagavan said, after few minutes, that few minutes are very important. That few minutes that completely deeply went inside is just like putting a bait to catch a fish which is running under the water. Like that, this Chetana Shabala, this feeling of Arunachala, this dream, divine dream of Arunachala was something like a fish which was never coming to the surface of his mind, but inside the deep waters of his being, it was just swimming inside him. This bait from outside. This person, when he said pronounced Arunachala, it was just like a bait. It just went inside and brought that already connected roots, already that source, his real root was exposed. He suddenly felt Arunachala. Then he asked, where is it? You don't know that? It is Tiruvannamalai. Tiruvannamalai Bhagavan knew. So when he said Tiruvannamalai, suddenly he came to surface. He became grounded. Oh, is it Tiruvannamalai? He asked. Then that was the first thing. See, in the great Tamil saint, Appar, he has written how a jiva goes to Lord. The first thing is listening. Munnam avanudaya namam kettan, murti avanirukkum vannam kettan, pinnayavanuடைய வாரூர் கேட்டாள், பேர்த்தும் அவனுக்கே பிச்சையானாள், தன்னை மறந்தாள், தன் நாமம் கெட்டாள், அகன்றால் அகலிடத்தார் ஆச்சாரத்தை, தலைப்பட்டாள் நங்கை தலைவன் தாழே. Bhagavan's entire life is there in that song. முன்னம் அவனுடைய நாமம் கேட்டாள். In feminine gender it is used. Just as a lady, a girl, she first listens to her beloved. Just like that, முன்னம் அவனுடைய நாமம் கேட்டாள். Bhagavan heard about Arunachala. Then he said, is it Tiruvannamalai? Murti avanirukkum vannam kettan. Then Bhagavan said, Arunachala completely covered my intelligence for the time being. Otherwise, he would have realized the self completely there and remained in Madurai itself. So he covered my understanding to pull me to Tiruvannamalai. So for the time being, that fire subsided. The second thing is reading Periya Puranam. That's also very important. Periya Puranam, the hagiography, the stories of saints, their melting devotion to Shiva. That book was also there waiting for Bhagavan. For a long period it was there, but Bhagavan never opened it. Only when the time comes, even if the book is there in your house, you will open it. Otherwise you will not. Even if you open, no interest will be there. Yavanna anugraha sakshat jayate parameshwarat, tavanna sadgurum kashit sat shastram vapi no labhete. So when the time comes, you open. Bhagavan opened that book and he read that Periya Puranam and that melting devotion of saints, and he identified with somebody. He identified with them and he said, I should have that devotion. His concept about Lord was only just like Pauranic gods. Bhagavan said, I was not aware about Brahman, Atman or anything. I just wanted Ishvara to come before me. I used to even have that thirst. I used to imagine that Lord will manifest before me suddenly. He used to expect that. Every day he went to school and came back. He used to say, there was a deep pain within me to realize God, to see God in physical form just like this Nayanmar saw. So I thought Shiva will come before me. In some form he will appear, suddenly the sky will open up and Shiva will come before me. But nothing happened, but there was a deep pain And Bhagavan used to have that, used to say headache. And his paternal aunt who was there, she used to give him medicine. She used to say, why you are having that headache? She says, some headache is there, some pain is there. His entire body was on fire. And the third experience, the culminating experience, is that famous death experience. When Bhagavan in Madurai, when he was studying in the school on a Sunday, when he was simply sitting in his room, suddenly he felt he is going to die. Maranam vanduduthu, mrityu vanduduthu. Enna panna? Death has come. See, death is the entry door to truth. Through death, you enter into deathlessness. You have to die and take rebirth to recognize the deathlessness. You have to travel through death to immortality. That is why in Bhagavatam it starts with death. That Parikshit is going to die on the 7th day. In Kathopanishad, this Nachiketas, this boy, directly encounters death. He goes to Yama and asks, who are you? So death is the divine teacher. I gave a definition to death. D-E-A-T-H. Divine eater and the teacher of humanity. He swallows everybody and is the greatest teacher. Unless you go to him, you will never learn. Unless you question death, you will never know what is deathlessness. Unless you encounter death, you will never see deathlessness, recognize deathlessness. So in Bhagavan's life, he felt he is going to die. Actually, the death experience was not the cause for his realization, but his approach to death experience. Because many go through something like a death sometimes in their life, but that doesn't help us. But in Bhagavan's case, when he felt he is going to die, death has already come to me. This body is going to die, and he remained stiff, laid down, and he imagined that this body will be taken to cremation ground, it will be cremated, burnt. But when the body is burnt, do I die? There was a sudden quest within him. When the body dies, when it is burnt, I do not die, this body will be burnt, but something from the depth of me, the full force of my personality is there as I. And that experience of I am, I can never lose. The body can die, but that I can never die. See, this experience anybody can have, provided we are alert. See, when I was only a boy, I was only 8 or 9, in my family, in our family, there was consecutively 3 or 4 deaths took place. My father, my father's brother, 3 or 4 deaths. And 2 of my aunts, they were talking about death. I was only a boy then. I was just listening to their conversation. One of them, she narrated, she was asking the other lady, what happens after death? Because all these ceremonies were taking place. The Shraddha ceremonies were taking place. And I was constantly seeing death. About 3 or 4 death in 2 years gap. So these 2 ladies, they were having a conversation. One of them, the younger lady, asked the elder one, what happens after death? And the moment she asked, the answer was there within me, because I was taught that they will go to Pitraloka and they will meet their elders, who had already arrived there. அப்படித்தானே, இங்கேருந்து போய் எடுத்துனா அங்க நம்ம தாத்தா பெரிய தாத்தா எல்லாம் இருப்பாளே, எல்லாரையும் பார்க்கலாம். So I was having that answer in my brain. But the elderly lady, she was a little bit educated. Educated means educated. So she was an aristocratic lady. So this younger lady, when she asked what happens after death, instead of giving any traditional reply or even a spiritual reply, her answer was, what happens? They become non-existent. That was her answer. Ava illama agara. She said, they become non-existent. I was having just, when you think that they go to other loka, you are satisfied that nothing is happening, just like from going to this place, that place you are going, that's all. So I was little bit satisfied with that answer. So that regular reply will come, I was expecting. But suddenly a bombshell fell on me. This lady says we will become non-existent. Shunya. It fell like a bombshell. This I recollected only after reading Bhagavan, and after many, many years I recollected this incident. But at that time, when this lady said we will become non-existent, it fell on my ears, and there was a sudden imagination. I was trying to imagine myself as non-existent. I was trying to imagine myself as non-existent, but I could not accept. Something from within says, how can something which exists become non-existent? I am there, நான் இருக்கேன், எப்படி இல்லாம ஆக முடியும்? I am there, and if I become non-existent, who will know that non-existence? So something from within pushed that answer out. Later on, when I read Bhagavad Gita, I read Nasato vidyate bhavaha na bhavo vidyate sataha ubhayorapi dushtontastvanayoho tattvadarshibhi. All those verses, all those philosophical explanations, I read later on. But at that moment was a very sacred moment in his life. I recognized it later on. So non-existence is something, when you face non-existence, then you recognize existence. When you face death, then only you recognize the life principle. So in Bhagavan's life, he directly encountered death, and for a few moments that vichara was very intense. From that experience, Bhagavan's teaching blossomed. His entire life, he was giving out the teaching of Atma Vichara. That teaching blossomed from the death experience. When he faced death, he inquired who is dying. The body dies. The body will be burnt. But will I disappear? What happens to the I? What happens to this I within me? He said, I felt that Purna Vastu there. Something which is full, which can never be non-existent. The I, which is the only reality, it is just like the Shruti note behind the music. The raga can change, the tala can change, but the Shruti can never change. And there was that feeling of I. Bhagavan's teaching, there is 3 usages of I. Ahankara, Aham Spurti, Aham Bodha. Here what happens is that Aham Spurti, that pulsation of I, which is in its pure form, it has got separated from the body, from the mind, from the intellect. A kind of deeper attrition, churning was taking place within him. And that I was so visible. It was not connected with the body, not the mind. It was purely experienced as itself. And Bhagavan says, there was a strange fascination to follow that I experience to the source. I thought to the source. He says strange fascination. And that pulsation, that spurti became so natural to me, that dhara, that current became so natural to me, that I got rooted there, and I recognized that I am the self, I am not the body or the mind, I am the self, and this I is the self, not the body or mind, and that recognition was stabilized there itself. After that, this experience happened only for a few minutes. He entered into timelessness. When somebody asked Bhagavan, how much time, Bhagavan, you had that death experience? Bhagavan said, "Oru ara mani nera irundirukkum." Said, half an hour perhaps. Then Bhagavan himself corrected, no, just to lie down and to ask the question, it might have taken few minutes. So about 5 minutes it might have taken. Then Bhagavan suddenly turned back and asked the questioner, where is time? He asked, where is time? Do you think that experience took place in time? The moment that recognition happens, there is no time, it is eternity. The moment I recognize that I was that, I am that, and I will be that. There is no time there. No special sakshatkara there. It was ever attained. So that experience, at that sacred moment, Ramana Maharshi was born. You know, the mysterious thing is, after this experience, just like any other boy, Bhagavan went to school and came back. Because he was not aware about that experience as something spiritual, he took it very naturally. His very nature was to take anything naturally. He has to accept any experience. You know, when Bhagavan's friend, his name was Rangan, he was a close friend of Bhagavan. In Madurai days, he used to go to school with Bhagavan. When Rangan later on came to Bhagavan and asked, Bhagavan, you had self-experience, self-realization in Madurai. You could have at least told me that you had that. You didn't even reveal it to me. Bhagavan said, Enake theriyadeppa. Even I was not aware. I thought some very pleasing, pleasurable disease has come to me. There was no anger, there was no agitation, all peaceful, quiet, and Bhagavan says he thought it is a sickness, illness, something like that. Suppose even if it was a disease, he would have accepted it. That was his nature. Whatever comes, he will accept. Yannam yaduvo adishayvai. Annamalayai adiyenai anda andre avi udal kondai. Yannam yaduvo adishayvai. The moment, oh Arunachala, you caught hold of me, you took my body and mind as yours. From that moment, I have no body or I have no mind. Whatever happens is yours. Yannam yaduvo atishayvai. After that death experience, he went to school and came back. He might have suffered much in school. Then later on, one of his school teachers, he came to Tiruvannamalai to see Bhagavan, did namaskaram to Bhagavan and said, Swami, I have a doubt, I have to ask. Then Bhagavan said, fearing your question, I ran away from Madurai. Now you come here and attack me with questions. உங்க கேள்வியை பயந்து நான் இங்க வந்துட்டேன். இங்க வந்து கேள்வி கேட்கிறீங்களே. So Bhagavan went to school and came back like any other student, but he was lost in that shruti, that current. As I said yesterday, punkhānupunkha vishayekshana tatparopi brahmāvalokadhishanam na jahati yogi. Sangeeta tāla laya nritya vasham gatapi maulistha kumbha parirakshana dhihi nativa. When the yogi He observes the world and sees everything, each and every bit of thing he is observing. At the same time, he is rooted in the self. Brahmavaloka deshanamna jahati yogi. Example is, you can see in many of these southern local village dance, they put a kumbha in their head and dance. They will be dancing according to the music, according to the script. They will be showing mudras and looking at the audience also. Even at that complete oneness with music, they will be dancing. But still, they will be aware, very alert not to make the kumbha fall, to keep it intact there. Like that, Bhagavan was rooted in that current, that dhara inside him. And he was moving about outside. That dhara was always there. But Bhagavan, although he was rooted in the dhara, he was not aware what has happened to him. But dhara, that dhara, Kunjaswami used to say that current, that dhara, that srotas. Kunjaswami used to say, even after Bhagavan's Mahasamadhi, that dhara is there in Ramanashram. When Sharadaka went to Kunjaswami, she asked him, the children come here and they play around ashram. And Kunjaswami said, let them play. Don't force them to meditate. Don't force them to do sadhana. As bacteria, this virus of cold or some fever, it catches hold of you. Like that, the virus of self-knowledge is there around Arunachala. And that will catch hold of these children. And when she asked that question, she might not be aware. I was there, sitting in front. She has written about this incident, but when she was asking, I was only a small boy then, I was sitting and Kunjaswami was narrating this incident to her. At that time, Swami also said, I go around Arunachala many times in mind, in sankalpa, because I am not able to do it physically now, so I do it inwardly. And he even said, Sharada Vama, Bhagavan Koyande Vandirka. That was the way he addressed. So I was sitting there. So, that current, that dhara, it is the thing which catches hold of. The Kripa Shakti. So Bhagavan was rooted in that dhara, that srotas, that current. After that only we know what happened when somebody gave imposition to Bhagavan in school. In English grammar, nahi nahi rakshadi dukranya karane. The teacher, he did a great service to the world by giving imposition to Bhagavan. He asked Bhagavan to write English grammar. Bhagavan took that, he wrote it once and he was disgusted, threw it away, sat absolutely immersed in that state. And Bhagavan's brother was looking from behind. He asked, Ippidiyella irukkara vaalukku idella edukku? You behave like a Swami, like a yogi. Then why should you study and why should you live in the world, in the house, like anybody, like others? That he was expressing all through. See, that question was always there. They used to tease Bhagavan, Yogeshwarar Vandach. Yogeshwara has come. Why don't you go to forest like the ancient Rishis? So that teasing was always there. But Bhagavan never took it. But that time when he asked this grammar, in the form of grammar, another message from Arunachala came. So he threw that book away, and when he asked, he felt Arunachala is calling. The pull of Arunachala has already. Peyar ninaithidave pidittu iluttanai un perumayar arivar Arunachala. You just pulled me. That moment, he threw away the book, and the rest we know. He wrote the letter that I am going to my father's place. See, there also Bhagavan has not recognized his experience. He had already had that full experience, but intellectually he was not aware. He was simply a devotee there. He wrote, I am going to my father's place. My father is calling me. And this is embarking on a sacred journey. Nobody need to search these few words he wrote, and there was no name. Tan namam kettal. There was no name. There was nobody who wrote the letter. After that he never signed. He never wrote his name. And somebody he has written about his name in Arunachala Ramana. In Aksharamana Malai, he writes Arunachala Ramana. But that was not his name. When devotees sang Ramana Sadguru, Ramana Sadguru, Ramana Sadguru Rayane, Bhagavan also used to sit with them and sing. Then they asked, why Bhagavan, we are singing about you, you are singing? See, Ramana Sadguru is not this body, it is that Arunachala. Whatever came to him, he gave to him. Gave to Arunachala. So he directly came to Arunachala. After writing that letter, he landed on Tiruvannamalai. And when he came, Bhagavan says, Aruguru mamayamit achalama kanden. When I came here, I wanted to meet the Lord, my Father. But the moment I came, I saw it as achala. Achala means, one meaning is mountain, the other meaning stillness. I saw it as still. And he said, I saw Kanden. Next verse, he begins with Kandavan Yavanena Karuttinul Nada. That moment, Bhagavan was initiated into self-enquiry. When he said, I saw, he said, who saw? The question arose within him, who is the being, who is the person who has realized? Who saw? Kandavan Yavan, who has seen God? I. And who is this I? Kandavan Yavanana Karuttinul Nada, Kandavan Indrida Nindradu Kande. I saw that there was no Kandavan. There was no seer there. Kandanan Endrida Karuttelavillai. I could not claim that I saw. I have seen. Neither can I say that I have not seen. Kandilan Endrida Karuttelumareen. The only thing that I can do is to sit still, silent, in Maunam. That was what Bhagavan was doing all his life. In talks in many places, you can see this incident repeated. One devotee comes to Bhagavan, he asks, Swami, teach me self-knowledge. How should I attain realization? Bhagavan will simply keep quiet. No answer. Then after a few minutes, this devotee again asks, Swami, I asked you to teach me. Bhagavan replies, all the while I was teaching, you are not recognizing. See, the mystery is, Bhagavan has not read any Vedanta traditionally, but the same thing is there in Brahma Sutra Bhashya. Shankara narrates a small anecdote where a disciple goes to his master. His name is Bhadva. He goes to his guru Bashkali and asks, Swami, teach me Brahman. Guru did not speak. This disciple stayed with the master for 1 year and there was no teaching. After 1 year, this disciple asked, why you never taught me anything? And the Guru says, Brumaha Khalu Tumtu na Vijanasi. He says, I was all the while teaching. It was a 24 hours, every minute, every second eloquence. There was an uninterrupted communion, but you didn't recognize. Tumtu na Vijanasi, avachanena iva brahma provacha. Without uttering a single word, there was constant eloquence, constant communion, in silence. That was Bhagavan saying. Bhagavan said, how can I teach you? Because you yourself as Dakshinamurti sat silent without uttering any word. Vindilai Panduni Vilakkidai Entral. That is why you are as a hill. You stand here to teach this absolute truth to everybody. through silence, you have taken this form of hill. Vindidadu unnilai vilakkida endre vindalam achalama vilangida nindrai. As this hill, you stand here to teach that highest experience through silence, to impart self-knowledge through silence, to emanate self-experience through silence. You stand as Arunachala. Thus Bhagavan landed on Tiruvannamalai. All the while that boy Venkataraman was carrying a fire inside him. In Ramakrishna's life, the same thing happened. Ramakrishna had that burning experience in his body at a particular stage. Nobody could cure him. All physicians were brought by Mathurnath Babu. Nobody could cure him. At that time, that Bhairavi Brahmani landed there. She put some chandana paste, some garlands on his neck, and she worshipped him with some mantras that cured him out of that burning sensation. But Bhagavan had no guru. Bhagavan himself says, Arunachala, you are my everything. You possess to me. I don't have any physical teacher outside. Who will teach Bhagavan? When Nayana, Kavyakanta Ganapati Muni, had some tremendous spiritual experience, he was having some problem in Arunachala hill. Then some devotee came to Bhagavan and said, Bhagavan, Nayana is having some problem. You should come. Then Bhagavan slowly walked and looked at him and gave him some simple suggestion to remove that problem. Nayana, he himself was a great yogi, Kavyakanta Ganapati Muni. He prostrated before Bhagavan, and then Bhagavan was walking back. Some of Bhagavan's attendant was following him. Bhagavan simply remarked, these people have somebody to tell, but who was there for me? Nobody other than him. Nobody other than him to guide me. So that reveals, when he came as a boy, when he landed at Tiruvannamalai, whole body was burning like fire. When he went into Arunachaleshwara temple, he just embraced that lingam and said, Un aanaippadi vandeen. I came by thy bidding, thy call. Unnishtam enishtam. Now, I have no will of my own, your will is my will. See, the entire bhakti is condensed in this one sentence, Sharanagati. Unnishtam enishtam. I have no ishtam now. My mind is surrendered to you, my body is surrendered to you. I have no will of my own. Ishtam enishtam. And that very moment, his whole body became cool. That fire was just sucked. It was assuaged. He came out. There was a shower. Because his head was shaven. He didn't take the usual bath. Arunachala poured. There was a downpour, heavy downpour on that day. And you know, when devotees later on when they research, that was a rain in Tiruvannamalai after 2 years. On that day, when Bhagavan landed on that September 1st, there was a heavy downpour. After that, he sat in that Ayiram Kal Mandapam, then into that Padala Lingam cave. He was immersed in that state. After many days only, some devotees found him out and brought him outside. At that time, we know the story, his legs were all swollen. They were all eaten by creatures. But he was not aware of the body. He was immersed in that inner bodha. Kimapi satata bodham kevalananda rupam. Nirupamam ativelam nityamuktam niriham. Niravadhi gaganabham nishkalam nirvikalpam hridi kalayati vidwan. Brahmapurnam samadho. Prakriti vikriti shunyam. Bhavanatita bhavam samarasam asamanam manasam bandhaduram nigama vachana siddham nityam asmat prasiddham hridi kalayati vidwan brahmapurnam samadhau. That samadhi state, Sri Shankara describes it, he is trying his best to describe that state in Vivek Chudamani. He was immersed in that state and is brought out of that Patala Lingam cave. Slowly, Bhagavan started moving about and he sat under an ilupai tree. There happened the first testimony. And he was sitting there. Up to that point, he has not questioned what has happened to him. He was simply accepted whatever experience has taken place. But at that point, various devotees and scholars came and read before Bhagavan all Tamil works about Vedanta. Vedanta Chudamani, Yoga Vasishtam, Kaivalya Navanitam, all those books they brought and read. Then Bhagavan was wondering, oh, this is what has happened to me. And this is what they call as realization, jnana, brahmanubhava. For attaining this, people are putting so much effort, so many paths, so many sadhanas, so much of striving is there to attain this. Namma kadhe tane pesara. They are speaking about our story, what has happened to us. And and that few days, just like cotton which sucks water, all what was read before him, he just absorbed them into him. Later on, people when they asked, he used to give verbatim answer. People used to wonder. One great scholar, he asked me, they say that Ramana Maharshi has not read books, but when he quotes, when he speaks, you can trace even the word in some ancient text. How it happens? Bhagavan had, first of all, he had that experience. Second, whatever he heard, he just absorbed them into himself. And even Bhashyam and Upanishad mantras, everything he used to clarify. When devotees asked him, what does it mean? Sometimes he used to even quote. At that time, he recognized, because he already had that experience, so it was very easy for him to see the meaning of the text. So he recognized it there. Now the mystery is, people are seeking truth, while truth sought me and swallowed me. Devotees are seeking Satyam, but that Satyam itself came to me, caught hold of me and revealed to me its real nature. And Bhagavan says, why this happened? Because in the world, the absolute clarity of Vedanta should flourish. The absolute clarity of self-knowledge should flourish. That decision came to Arunachala. So he caught hold of me. Puvikul pongidum puvichur pungavan churikut sundaran. Bhagavan in a mysterious way, in a couplet, in a poem, in a shloka, in a Tamil verse, he says, this Arunachala caught hold of me. I, who was born to Sundaram Iyer and Azhagammal in Tiruchuri, he just caught hold of me. Because of their tapas I was born, he says. Sundaram Sadiki Utpannanan, I was born to them. This Arunachala caught hold of me, and Tan Padam Yanakku Tandanan. He says, he revealed his highest state to me so that Jagatil Tanmayam Chayikya Chinmayam Tazhikya. In the world, this Tanmayam Chayikya, this self-experience will flourish. This self-knowledge will spread, it will emanate, it will naturally propagate. Seekers who are seeking the highest truth, their thirst will be satisfied. For that sake, Arunachala caught hold of me and gave me the highest experience and made me abide in him. It's the story of Kripa, grace. And that truth, Ulla Porul, Ulladu, Bhagavan was so naturally abiding in it. And Bhagavan looked at his devotees also as that Purna Vastu. He never thought that I am Guru, they are my disciples, I have to teach them. That thought never occurred to him. So very naturally he used to say, you are already that. What are you seeking? You are only pretending as if you are ignorant. Ignorance can never be there. Ajnana enga irukku? How can darkness stay in the sun? So too ignorance can never remain in the self. Because the very nature of the self is jnanam. How can ignorance come there? The very nature of the self is knowledge. It is by nature freedom itself. So you can never be ignorant, you can never be ajnani. And Bhagavan looked at everyone as the self. So when he looked at us, that awakening happened in us so naturally, because he was not looking at a person, he was looking at himself in our heart. When devotees asked a question, he used to answer naturally, very naturally. Sometimes you will take one day to answer one question. The answer will come in an unexpected moment. And the devotee has least expected an answer, the answer will come. That was an art in itself, to get answer from Bhagavan. You should ask question and remain still without interrupting him. Sometimes he will answer after half an hour, after 10 minutes, after 5 minutes. Sometimes the answer will come from devotee's mind itself. One simple devotee called Nadesh Iyer, he used to get angry. Fits of anger used to come to him. Whenever anger came, he used to roll in the ground calling Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva. One day somebody in the kitchen said, you always chant Om, 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 and you get caught in this anger. Why don't you go to Bhagavan and ask him how to conquer anger? And he decided I should go and ask Bhagavan the method to conquer anger. One day when he became so angry for some cause, instead of rolling in the ground, he ran to Bhagavan to ask question, how to conquer anger. Bhagavan just looked at him. Instead of asking Bhagavan, how should I conquer anger? You know what he asked? He asked Bhagavan, shall I go for a Giri Pradakshina? He asked. See, Bhagavan has already given the answer. And the anger came, he went to Bhagavan how to conquer the anger. Instead of asking that, when Bhagavan looked at him, he asked Bhagavan, shall I go for a Giri Pradakshina? Bhagavan said, yes, that is good, go. So whenever he became angry, he used to go for a Giri Pradakshina. By the time he came back, that has already subsided. Sometimes the answer will come like that. Somebody asked Bhagavan, how do you answer? You say Jnani has no mind. Then how the answer comes? Bhagavan said, the source from where the question arises, from the same source the answer also comes. From that source the question comes, from this source the answer comes, that's all. The source is same, the body is different, that's all. He never looked at you as a person, and he never considered him as a person. To him, everyone was same. Even the animals, the birds, monkeys, everything was same to him. And everything mattered, or nothing mattered. He remained ever immersed in himself. He never thought that any more teaching is necessary than remaining as the self. Still, when devotees persisted, when they asked, out of compassion, sometimes he answered. But more than the words, his silence itself was the answer. His words, they were also coached in that silence. They were also soaked in that silence. That's why Paul Brenton said, his silence is more eloquent than his speech. It directly communicates. He was immersed in that inner Arunachalam, that inner self. To see him immersed in that state itself was a great teaching. Especially when he used to go to hill. He used to get transported. And many who saw him alone there, that was an experience in itself. One lady from Madras, Chennai, she narrated an incident to me. It is not recorded. They might have recorded now. Shyamala Mami irka. When she was a small girl, her mother said, catch hold of him, he is the permanent reality. I will be here today, I will not be there tomorrow, I will die. But he is the eternal being. And this girl, she could not know. She was only a small girl, so she did not understand much. But she found Bhagavan is something very important. So when Bhagavan went up the hill, this girl followed him. After few steps, this attendant said, when small girl is following, then Bhagavan looked back and said, Tirumba po. Bhagavan said, go back, return back. That was the only word Bhagavan said. More than that word, his look and that word, the teaching of Tirumbapo, that lady, she says, after so many years, I could not forget his look and that saying the Tirumbapo, now I recognize what it means. To return back, to go back to the source, Tirumbi aham tanai dinamaka kankan teriyumendanayan Arunachala. She says, I recognize it now. Many had only one word from Bhagavan, but that was enough for them. Sadhu Om Swami, when he was coming to Tiruvannamalai from Tanjavur and going back, one day he wanted to go back to Tanjavur and he wanted to take leave of Bhagavan. Somebody told Bhagavan has gone up the hill, you go and see him there. So he went there and prostrated and said, casually, Bhagavan, now today I am going to Tanjavur. Bhagavan just looked at him and Sadhu Om says, I should not have disturbed him there. But when I went and looked at him and he looked at me back, that was not a human face that I saw. Those eyes, they were just a door for you to see something which is not of this world, which is infinite, which is divine. No word can communicate what it is. Tad Vishnoho paramam padam sada pashyanti surayaha diviva chakshuratatam. That Vedam itself narrates, describes the face of a jnani in that mantra. Veda says, the jnani, his look is so vacant as if he is looking at Divi, as in the space. But Vishnoho paramam padam sada pashyanti. Inwardly, he is ever aware of that supreme abode, supreme state. Remaining in that state, he looks at you. Remaining in that state, he looks at you, and he is just like a entry door, both the inside and outside. He stays in that bhava mukha, and you see through him nothing but God. His body is just like a shape through which you see God. But he never claims. He remains naturally in that, and he says, you and I are same. And just to say that, he remained 54 years in body, just to tell you, I am you, you are me. That was the only teaching. Actually, even who am I is not Bhagavan's teaching. Aduve nee endru ammaraigal aarthidavum. Bhagavan says, Tattvamasi. The Veda says, you are that. Instead of remaining as that, when you ask, I don't understand, then only Bhagavan comes out with, who am I? Who says I don't understand? Who is this I which says I don't understand? Find out where from this I arises. Go back to the source. Hold on to that I. And that I, Bhagavan said, it is Ulla Parul and there is Ullal. Ullal means the flow of the mind to become something. Ulla Parul is that pure beingness, existence, satta. Ullal Ara, Ullatte Ulladal. That Ullal Ara, Ullal means to become something, that thought, mind, the very thinking of the mind is to become something. It's a movement to become something. Yedo Ahanam. That is a disease, Bhava Roga. The disease of the mind to become something. I am now something, I should become something. That is acceptable in the biological plane, in the psychological plane perhaps. But inside, in the self, there is no becoming. It's always in that agitation to become something, you lose sight of what is. ஏதோ ஆகணும்னு பார்க்கறத இருக்கிற பொருளை கோட்டை விட்டு விடுறோம். ஏதோ ஆகணும். I should be something, I should become something, I should attain something. There Shankara says, na utpadyam, na apyam, na samskaryam, na vikaryam, na kartrubhoktru rupam va. This Brahman about which we are talking, it is neither creative nor attainable, nor can it be attained through some kind of culturing. Neither can it be changed, neither can it be attained through doership or enjoyership. Na utpadyam, na apyam, na samskaryam, na vikaryam, na kartrubhoktru rupam va. Then how to attain that? Muruganar Swami asked Bhagavan, give me that Atmanubhuti. Bhagavan said, irundabadikke iru endran. When he asked Bhagavan how to attain the truth, Bhagavan said, remain as you are. Irundabadikke iru endran. Then how to work in the world? Bhagavan said, Iraivan Arul Seluttum Vazhikke Sel endran. The two dimension, Bhagavan gave out teaching. The body, mind, intellect level, you function as that mysterious force makes you function. But in the real self, remain as you are. Irundabadikke iru, Seluttum Vazhikke Sel. So today, we just had an introduction. We need at least 3 or 4 days just to enter the topic. And the main problem is my English. I rarely speak in English. Once in a year, twice in a year. That too only in Ramanashram or in some Ramana Kendra. Otherwise I only speak in Tamil or Malayalam. So, I will take at least 2 days to become natural. So today we have started. Tomorrow we will continue. Wherever Bhagavan takes, there we will go. Whatever Bhagavan makes us say, that we will say. Whatever He makes us understand, that we will understand. Wherever He makes us stay, there we will stay. He is the driver, we are just the vehicle. Let Him drive, let us see where He takes us. Yato mamatma bhavasittvameva tato na vachyam mama kinchitasti yatha taveshtam kurumam tathaiva tvam atmanatham ramanam bhajami.